Welcome back to Growth Colony, Australia's B2B growth podcast. I'm Alex Hipwell with X-Growth, your co-host for this podcast, where you'll hear from B2B executives in sales and marketing roles on the newest and most effective strategies and tactics in the B2B space. Now, let's dive right into this episode.
Hello again. Thanks for joining us at another episode of Growth Colony, Australia's B2B growth podcast. Today, I'm joined by Ljubica Radoicic, the marketing director for APAC for a company called Hexagon. Now, today we're going to be talking about how organizations, especially in the enterprise level, can go about and build a sales development team, and what does that mean? What does that mean, and how they should go about doing it? Now, on that note, please, Ljubica, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Shahin, for the opportunity. Very excited to be talking about sales development today.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, for those who might not know you, Ljubica, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, definitely. So maybe I'll kick off and just talk about Hexagon a little bit. Hexagon is the leading global, as I said, engineering technology company that really drives digital transformation, automation, and data solutions across a wide range of industries. So Hexagon has a number of different divisions under its umbrella, and I'm part of the PPM division, which specializes in services process-based industries such as oil and gas, utilities, manufacturing, energy, and the AEC market. So we provide full asset lifecycle technology for these industries. And that goes from design and construction through to operation, maintenance, and decommissioning of large process-based facilities. So in my role as the marketing director, I actually lead a small team of very talented marketers and an SDR team. And we're really focused on, like all B2B marketing teams, on brand building, demand generation, lead generation, retention, and market development. And over the past couple of years, we've gone through a huge transformation within marketing. So we've moved from a very traditional market operation, which is mostly focused on events and advertising, to a full-blown revenue marketing engine, working hand in hand with the sales team to deliver on business objectives. So as part of this all-encompassing transformation and revenue marketing strategy, we've introduced the sales development team. And we started from one location and now operate a huge team across the region. So otherwise, besides obviously the role at Hexagon, I've been in B2B marketing for over 20 years, really focused and passionate about transforming and optimizing high-performing marketing teams around delivering growth, focused on customer-centric strategies that grow business and expand into new markets.
I love that. That's amazing, and I think it's definitely the objective of a lot of marketing departments to kind of transition from the events department to being more aligned with revenue and making sure that they're delivering and their KPIs that they're meeting, and they're more aligned with sales team. Now, you mentioned that you've built a SDR or a sales development rep team within the marketing team as well. But firstly, I would like to know, how do you define sales development? What is sales development?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the million-dollar question, as they say. So sales development is really a specialized sales function. And sales development is tasked with really lead discovery and prospecting, outbound calling, lead account development, and lead qualification. So the primary goal of SDRs is really to build relationships with key prospects with a view to uncover needs, engage in a quality discovery conversation, qualify the lead, and then hand over this lead to the sales rep. So there's a specific threshold or criteria that obviously this prospect or lead needs to meet before it's handed over to sales. And this really, again, depends on what sort of qualification overall is used within a sales organization. So for example, in my organization, we use the traditional BANT criteria, which is budget, authority, need, and time, but others might use, again, other qualification criteria. I think it's also really critical to understand the various nuances of definitions of SDR teams, and that's where I think there's a lot of confusion in markets. So, SDRs can be thought of in terms of inbound versus outbound, lead development, even inside sales. And I think it's really critical to understand the differences and the purposes, objectives that these kind of different specializations within the overall SDR kind of functions serve, and how to best deploy them within a business.
Interesting. And why, the next question that I want to ask, if somebody's in a B2B organization,
Yeah.
why would they need a sales development rep? I mean, in B2B, you have had your quote unquote salespeople, or maybe account executives,
Yeah.
or BDMs, traditionally probably best
Mhm.
known for business development reps.
Yeah.
Why this transition into SDRs?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So it really boils down to, again, deploying the best person for the job. And I think overall, obviously, we know that buyer needs are evolving and becoming more sophisticated. And the whole buying process is a lot more complex today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. So I think overall, yeah, long gone are the days of the sales rep as a lone wolf. And it is all about teamwork. So it's difficult to expect a BD or an account executive to be a Swiss Army knife and to be multi-talented, and really have the time for prospecting, cold calling, building pipeline. And that's really where sales specialization comes into play. So SDRs are experts really at lead development and lead generation, and it really takes a special kind of person, from what I've experienced, to really sit the phone, take that rejection day in and day out, build relationships, and have quality conversations. So I think overall, sometimes those SDRs, are looked upon as a commodity or as a churn and burn, function. But they really do operate in high pressure environments. And again, for BD, obviously, for a business, it's better to have the BD being out there and having face-to-face time with prospects, for example, or an account executive, rather than really spending their time, smashing the phones or prospecting, through social selling, which again they should be doing anyway. But it is about sales specialization and really making sure that, again, the best talent is tasked with the best role.
Gotcha. Yeah, and really dividing those responsibilities so that the people who are more experienced in closing deals are mainly focusing on closing deals rather than
That's right.
generating deals.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
You talked about inbound versus outbound,
Yeah.
different requirement for qualification at different companies.
Mhm.
How does this SDR role look like at Hexagon? So you talked about, you focus on band qualification, making sure
Yeah.
that it hits that level. Is it at Hexagon they're mainly focused on inbound leads that are coming in? Are they more focused on cold calling and reaching out to the right prospects? What are some of the responsibilities that these SDRs have at Hexagon?
Yeah, definitely. So we do have that really distinction even within an SDR function itself. So kind of three different buckets. So first of all, it's the inbound. The inbound focus SDR, and they're really tasked with kind of looking at obviously all the inbound leads or market general leads. So anything that comes, for example, from market activity, campaigns, webinars, events, or really coming into the lead queue within our CRM. So they do that sort of warm outreach, and really, I think from a career perspective, that's really a great starting point or entry point for someone that's looking to develop their career as an SDR. So they would start off inbound, always handling the inbound leads, because that kind of process is a bit easier. And then moving on to the the outbound function, which is what I was just talking about now, with kind of tying that in with, for example, account executives and business development. So that's really where, once they've kind of learned the ropes, and really, starting to get a feel for prospecting over the phone, handling objection, that's when they're moved into an SDR outbound. So that's the setup that we have, is with outbound. So doing a lot of that outbound outreach, cold calling, prospecting, and really the SDR in an outbound role really does take a special kind of person, as I said before, to be doing that work day in and day out. And we really see these kind of specialists as almost special forces that are there, breaking ground, special ops, as I like to call them, breaking ground and really clearing the way then for the sales team to come in and do their magic. So the SDR outbound, so they're doing the kind of the cold calling and prospecting every day. And then the next step from there is really the lead development kind of specialist. And that's that next level is, again, having experienced conversations, really looking to develop more high value strategic accounts. And for example, for us, the lead development, or that's the more senior SDR, is then really teamed up with a senior account exec. And then it's looking, okay, so how do we penetrate this account? How do we have more strategic conversations at different levels of the account? And that really goes beyond that whole kind of just the numbers game of, making sure that we hit X amount of calls and kind of, make an X amount of sales appointments. That's a more strategic conversation that the lead development rep has. And then from then on, for example, the rep could potentially move into a BD role or an AE role, or again, they might remain as part of the SDR. So that's kind of the setup or the model that we have as part of Hexagon. And we do have that distinction between the inbound sales rep, the SDR, so the regular SDR, and then the more senior SDR who is focused on lead development.
Right. So as you said, outbound is all about numbers and, hey, here's number of accounts that you want to target. But it sounds like this is very interesting. So the lead development SDR is, I'm guessing, like in every market, you would have a handful of really important accounts that you want to focus, and those go to are divided for a collaboration between an AE and a lead development SDR. Is that how it works?
That's right, yeah. Or like a strategic account manager, so like a senior account manager.
Interesting. And and so what would be the responsibility of the SDR in that situation? Are they responsible for opening doors still, or it's kind of like a 50-50 between the account executive or the account manager? What would be kind of their responsibilities in there?
Yeah, so the responsibility would be purely into, well, how do we expand and grow this account? So for example, an organization might have obviously existing relationships and selling into one particular division or one particular team within an organization. But then it's, again, opportunities, well, how do we expand these relationships at a more kind of enterprise and strategic level? So how do we penetrate into different parts of the organization? And that's where someone like a senior strategic account manager would, sit down with marketing. And this, again, plays pure into the account-based strategy or account-based marketing, with sitting down and really mapping out, who's who in the organization, who's who in the zoo, what does that organization structure look like? Who are the key players? And then working hand in hand with the senior SDR, the lead development rep, to then again establish those critical relationships within the other parts of an organization, with a view to then expand the footprint and really be able to grow the account.
I love that. That is such a mature model that very rarely is seen. That's on those both three of those levels. That I totally love that.
Cool.
So what are some of the, when you're hiring SDRs, and you mentioned it, it requires a different personality. It's a hard job to be on the phone, smile and dial, and then get rejected. People hang up on you, in the middle of the conversation, or they just, if they're nice, they would say they're not interested. And then there are the rare occasions that there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But what do you look for when you're trying to hire an SDR? Because one of the interesting things, and we had this conversation before, one of the interesting things about Hexagon is that the SDR or sales development rep team are under marketing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Why was that decision made in the first place?
Well, that's really boils down to what is the role of SDRs within a particular organization. And I think for us within Hexagon, we really see that as a more kind of strategic function. So that's where really the SDR team is kind of the the conduit between, or the link between the marketing and the sales organization. So they're really there to make sure that obviously any leads generated by marketing, they do go through the whole obviously lead scoring model that we have in place. But then it's really looking at again, you're qualifying this lead and making sure that a really qualified lead is handed over to the sales team, and that the SDR team does have a quality conversation. I think it also is it's a way also to maybe bring off, or I guess lift the value and elevate the position of the SDR team within an organization or within Hexagon to really truly serve their purpose, which is again that whole lead development and business development and being part of that business development process. Because I think traditionally, and from what I've experienced in my previous organizations and previous interactions with SDR roles, is that if they are part of the sales organization, then often they do become kind of administrators or support for the sales team, or they become just booking meetings just to kind of show activity, for example, against a sales rep. So they become no more than kind of glorified, basically telemarketing team or telesales team. So in that respect, it's really making sure for us that, again, the role of the SDR team is acknowledged, and that is a more strategic role that they play within kind of the overall sales and marketing strategy. And they're there to, as I said, really have those quality conversations, qualify leads, and make sure that, again, the sales team in hand is able to have a more valuable conversation, have a more of a consultative sale rather than just booking, for example, coffee meetings. So, which has been the case in a lot of in a lot of situations that I've encountered. So that really boils down to the position that the SDR team has within the Hexagon organization. I think also going back to your question around kind of hiring for SDRs and what we look for and the profile, I think exactly that, as you just said, Shahin, is we're looking at for some of that that has that kind of never say die mindset, and some of that's kind of willing to learn and evolve, and just being there and having a positive attitude day in and day out, and that is really kind of motivated by the hunt more than anything else, and is super resilient and really able to kind of learn from their mistakes or learn from the failures, because again, you are faced with success and failures every day. So we're looking for someone that has that kind of growth mindset, but also is able to maybe separate themselves a little bit from the day to day, and really is able to pick themselves up from one call to the next call and start afresh, because you never know, right? That next call is when you might hit the jackpot. So
Hit
it's
quota.
having that sort of
That's
hit
right.
the quota. Exactly.
That's right. And then the sweet commission.
Yeah.
No, I get that. Do you have some sort of a litmus test, Ljubica, in terms of figuring out whether this is a good SDR, this could be potentially a good SDR or not? Is there like certain questions that you would ask, or certain things that you would look for that is you use yourself as a litmus test?
Yeah, definitely. So we're hiring SDRs. We do go through a whole kind of rigorous interview and role play process. So we look at questions like attitude, kind of what their passion is, what drives them, how do they face failure, how do they pick themselves up, how do they collaborate with a sales team, because it always, even though obviously an SDR operates on their own, but they're still part of a broader organization, and so teamwork is really critical, their whole dynamic, but also role playing. So how well do they take feedback and coaching? Because again, that's really critical. If you're not able to coach someone, then again, they don't really have that sort of growth mindset. So yeah, there's some key criteria and considerations, but even more critical is just their ability to develop relationships over the phone, and really communication skills are super critical for an SDR.
Gotcha. I want to go back to the outbound SDR, an SDR that is going to is making calls and is trying to open doors. When they start working at Hexagon, or let's say they've been working at Hexagon for a while, I want to know what their responsibility is. Is their responsibility, okay, you go and you find out any way that you can to break into this list. Now, you Mr. or Mrs. SDR, you're going to be using phone, you can use email,
Yep.
you can use direct mail, you could use whatever it is. What's their responsibility, and what kind of restrictions have you started to put around an outbound SDR?
So really, they do have a lot of obviously tools at their disposal, just from a toolkit perspective, whether it's technology. Yeah, the whole SDR enablement piece is really critical. So I think haven't really, I guess, set any specific restrictions, but
Mhm.
like, being an SDR, obviously they need to be brilliant communicators, but they also need to be, fantastic marketers as well. So, having access to social media channels like LinkedIn, Twitter. So social selling is obviously big for SDRs.
Gotcha.
Having obviously email, even being able to run their own campaigns through, for example, the market automation tool and the CRM that we use. Also, I think we're quite lucky. The industry that we operate in, we have access to various project databases, which is really your lead served on a platter. So, we do know, what are the big kind of capital projects happening. Again, there's kind of a whole wealth of information available for SDRs for prospecting, but also even more sophisticated with buying intent, and using ABM tools or technology such as, for example, demand-based or MRP, where we can actually ascertain, well, what are our key accounts that we're targeting, what are they looking for, what are they, in the market for. So again, there's a whole kind of wealth of tools and resources available for the SDRs. So I think, again, long gone are the days where, the SDRs would just go through on a directory and pick up the phone. So there's a whole tech stack that they have available, including, I don't know, Dun and Bradstreet, Zoom Info, just dropping a few names there.
Yeah.
But I think also that kind of an interesting one, when we look at that from a market maturity perspective and how information is available. So looking at markets across, for example, the APAC region, so Australia and Singapore, where some of this technology does come in handy. But then when we're looking at regions, for example, around Southeast Asia or in Japan, where again it is difficult to get across this information, and then where there's also kind of more local language requirements, then again it becomes important to really know where to find this information, whether it's through company websites, through outreach. So even asking for referrals. So that's where the SDR really needs to be very resourceful in terms of how they come across this information, and how they come and again how they're able to get in touch with prospects.
Gotcha.
Hey, it's Alex from Xgrowth. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Growth Colony Slack channel. Do you ever find yourself stuck with a B2B problem? Need a second opinion on your next campaign? Or looking for some feedback on that piece of MarTech you're thinking to purchase? Well, that's why we created the Growth Colony Slack channel. This Slack channel is like a small dinner party where you get to meet and mingle with B2B professionals, hear what others are doing, and keep up to date with the latest B2B trends and news. You'll also get access to a range of exclusive content from our podcasts, webinars, and events. The best thing about it, it's all free. If this sounds interesting, head over to growthcolony.org/Slack and sign up. That's growthcolony.org/Slack.
Ljubica, I'd like to ask about some of the mistakes you've
Okay.
made in terms of building SDR teams.
Yep.
What comes to mind?
There's a lot. I think mistakes are inevitable, and they're just part of the of any sort of learning process. I think maybe I'll talk about more of the lessons learned. I think mistakes we probably make on a daily basis. Like no one's perfect, but I think there's kind of some of the key lessons learned, which I think are really important to share. So first of all, I think it's important to really hire an experienced team, because if you're looking to ramp up and really prove the business case, which is how we started up here with our SDR function in the Asia PAC region, So we started with a small team, and we really needed to ramp up quickly. So to do that, you really need, SDRs that know what they're doing. So you don't have that luxury to, start from scratch with, for example, hiring an inbound rep and then trying to get them to learn the ropes. So it's really critical to, again, hire an experienced team, which also means that, the cost will be high as well. So, making sure that anyone that's looking to start up a team, it's not, cannot be done in the cheap, right? Because you're just not going to succeed. And it's also important to really obviously, have that business case and to get buy-in, from executives, from leadership, but also more importantly from the sales organization, if that's an issue that's being, driven by marketing, as it was in our case. So that's something, as I said, that really does require long-term commitment and commitment from various parties and functions from an organization. Another one is definitely deciding on what sort of operating model best fits the organization. I think this is where we probably had a few trials and errors, and I think it's all about kind of evolving and looking at what best fits the organization. So I think we've had some setups in terms of SDRs that are more focused on geos or more focused on specific products or solutions. And I think that really goes back to how does that SDR team align to the overall sales and marketing strategy, and also how does it align to the overall sales structure. So today we do have kind of a setup that's more aligned around particular kind of accounts, and also market segments or customer segments. And that goes hand in hand with really how our sales team, again, is focused on, and again, how it fits with our overall go-to-market strategy. I think another critical one is really understanding the role of SDRs and how SDRs fit, again, within the overall sales marketing process. And I think for us, it's been definitely a kind of an education and a learning exercise, especially for, again, the marketing team, but also for the sales team. And I think that goes to some of the points that I was making really around understanding what the role of SDRs is and how SDRs fit within the broader sales strategy. So SDRs are not there to be sales admins. They're not there to book coffee appointments for the sales team. If you want someone to do that, we can definitely outsource that maybe to a third party. And that, again, goes in terms of the decision of the SDR model and what best fits for an organization. Is it about having an in-house SDR team, or is it about, for example, outsourcing to a third party? I think what we found is, again, having an in-house team works a lot better because we do operate in quite a complex environment with very complex technologies. So it's really hard for a third party to get their head around who we are as a business and the solutions that we sell. And that would take a lot longer, for example, for someone to get their head around.
Yes,
I think another one, there's just a couple more that I have in mind. So again, it's around having a clearly defined lead management and handover process. I think that's what we're still kind of grappling with some of that, but again, it goes around, how does that SDR team fit as part of the broader sales organization? Then I think the final one is just around, having clear definitions of, what does that ideal customer profile look like? What does a qualified lead look like? Removing really some of that subjectivity from the handover process, and that goes, beyond, again, just sales and SDR, but really setting out some of those clear SLAs around marketing, SDR, and sales to make sure that everyone really speaks the same language. So those would be definitely some of the kind of key lessons learned around this process for us. That we've been having now for almost 3 years.
Gotcha. I definitely want to come back and talk about sales. There were so many points in there, and I took a lot of notes here.
Okay.
But I definitely want to come back and talk about the engagement between sales and the SDR team.
Mm-hmm.
But I also like to know, you mentioned you have a complex product. You're selling in a complex environment, multiple decision makers, and understanding the customer is really important.
Yep.
In your experience, how long have you found it takes for an SDR person to be onboarded and start firing on all cylinders?
Mhm. So in our scenario, as I said, because we do operate in quite complex markets, oil and gas process-based industries, and you almost have to be a rocket scientist to you know to to kind of sell some of the technologies there because they are so complex. So yeah, from the hire to the onboarding, the training, could take anywhere from a couple of months. So let's say 6 to 8 weeks to roughly 3 months, I'd say, is until an SDR is fully ramped up. So yeah, it is quite a long process because, as I say, we do have quite a complex solution portfolio, and we sell into kind of multiple types of organizations, personas. So yeah, it takes around 3 months to basically onboard and ramp up a team.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And once they're onboarded, what's the compensation model? So I know some SDRs are compensated on a combination of, for example, the number of meetings they book versus like maybe a smaller percentage of
Yep.
if there's any revenue materialized from that. Some are purely focused on meetings booked.
Yep.
How do you go and evaluate the success of an SDR?
Yeah. So yeah, it's really understanding what the sales process is, and the KPIs, and building out the KPIs, and then really the commission structure around that. So for us, it is kind of band qualified meetings booked basically a month. So we do have monthly quotas for the SDR team, and then we have kind of some accelerators in there. So just to give a kind of let's take an example of 10 meetings a month, for example, bank qualified meetings, and then if they book 20 meetings or whatever, 15 meetings, then there's an accelerator for 20, so then it doubles, basically the commission doubles. So it's really incentivizing the SDRs to overachieve their quota. And then there's also in the end, so for any deals won that have come out of the SDR, then obviously they would get another kind of incentive for any opportunities that have closed that have come from an SDR.
Interesting. So there is that connection to
Yes.
the end of like revenue being materialized, and therefore, this deal came from this particular SDR, and they're going to get rewarded for it.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gotcha. The kind of last point that I want to dig into is the engagement between sales and SDR team, specifically at Hexagon, since the SDR team is under marketing, and it makes complete sense that you're saying the SDR team could become the booking coffees, or I'm preparing this presentation, can you look into it and make it pretty or something like that. I can totally see
or
they will become.
Can you clean up the the CRM for me?
Exactly. So, how did you manage to convince? Was there a lot of pushback at the beginning that maybe the sales organization were saying, no, this should be under us, and you had to like, was there a little bit of a push from at that point when you were trying to put the team in place?
Not at all. I think, and maybe we're unique in that respect, but really that initiative and the whole business case actually came from marketing. And I think it's something that the company tried to do in the past, but more leveraging third parties, and it didn't really work out that well. I think for the reason that I mentioned is just because we operate in a unique environment. So I think there wasn't like any sort of pushback, but it has been a really kind of steep learning curve for the sales team because they've never really had this sort of really supporter or enabler previously, so they had to do everything themselves. So I think that was really welcome with open arms to have something like this, so that again they can really focus on doing what they do best, which is selling. So I guess for us and how that works, it's really important around aligning SDRs, obviously around the sales and marketing. So making sure that, and so we speak the same language around ideal, what does that ideal customer profile look like? Aligning around key segments, solutions, and really aligning around our whole go-to-market strategy. So that's what's also been critical with kind of teaming SDRs with specific sales reps. So there is that whole kind of relationship that's evolving. And that way, can't be any more than, let's say, 3 reps, because otherwise it just becomes too much. So that synergy, that relationship between, SDR and sales rep is really critical, because, they're basically tied to the hip. So having, kind of daily stand-up calls, check-ins is really critical. And that is a partnership, and that evolves, and obviously takes time, to kind of build that trust between the SDR and the sales rep, because obviously the sales rep needs to know that, well, what's being handed to me by my rep is a quality lead, and I won't be wasting my time, just because an SDR just wants to kind of tick the box and make sure that they get pay their commission. So that whole kind of trust component is really critical, and then it's really around that whole alignment piece, around that. We all know that, we're meeting the right criteria, and it is the right quality conversation. And once that lead is handed over to the sales team, then the sales knows that, well, that that lead will be at stage 1 or 0, again, depending on what sort of decisions are made around the whole buying engagement process.
Ljubica, that's been amazing, and I really enjoyed all the points that you brought up. But do you think there is anything that I didn't ask from our conversation around building SDR teams that you think the audience will benefit from?
Yeah, definitely. So maybe one key point is, how to get started if you decide that the SDR function is kind of the right team for you to have as part of your organization. So how do you go about building an SDR team? And I think from my perspective, it's really key to understand, first of all, how SDRs fit as part of the broader strategy, and how they enable and support the overall sales and marketing process. So without having a kind of a true understanding of what SDRs do and how they fit within the buyer's journey and sales process, I think there's definitely potential to have a lot of issues, and for the function to ultimately fail. So it's really critical to understand what you need, even within the SDRs. As we said, there are nuances, whether it's the inbound rep or the outbound, even inside sales. And I think that's probably something that we haven't touched on in this conversation. The SDR versus the ISR, and there's definitely differences there, and sometimes even confusion. So inside sales, kind of, yes, more sales over the phone versus true lead development. So once you understand, again, the frameworks and the setup that you need to have, then it's really looking at building that business case and really developing an operational plan and playbook for the SDR team. So understanding what is that SDR model that we need to deploy, what are the key SDR processes, KPIs, what does that ideal customer profile look like, training, what is the SDR tech stack, then what's the kind of overall call strategy, which segments to focus on, how to best deploy, again, which sales reps to team up with. So there's so many considerations as part of the development process. But once that foundation is there, then you can definitely start looking at hiring the team. But I think from our perspective, it's definitely been a successful business case and a successful kind of project, and it's gone beyond something that's just been that we've been piloting in the APAC region. It's been so successful that it's been that it's gone global, and now we have teams that have been deployed across the different regions, including South America, EMEA, and North America. And it's been something that the business has seen a lot of value and really growth coming from. And again, from my perspective, highly recommended. But again, being mindful of what you're getting into and making sure that there is buy-in from various stakeholders within the organization.
Yeah, otherwise it's dead in the water. But I love the fact that it started from APAC and now taking over the world of Hexagon. That's a great sign. Now, I also know that you have a book coming out called Journey to the Top, the 10 critical tools you need to improve your revenue performance. When is the book going to be out? Because I'm super eager to have a look at that as well, Ljubica.
Yeah, definitely. So the book is due out in around mid-August. So we're just in the final stages. So there'll be probably a website coming up in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, the book really outlines this whole kind of process of moving from basically a traditional kind of marketing setup to really a true revenue marketing organization, and looks at how businesses can improve revenue performance, and really what are some of the growth strategies and kind of elements that they need to deploy to ensure ongoing growth and success. So I'm actually co-authoring that book with a business partner of mine. Her name is Eve Chan, based out of the US. And we're very excited about the book and about the launch. So watch this space.
Absolutely. So the website is going to come up. There's no link right now.
Not at the moment, but yeah,
Gotcha.
Anyone interested in finding out a bit more about the book and getting more information, definitely encourage them to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be providing updates through my LinkedIn posts.
Fantastic. Well, Ljubica, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners will too. So thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to future episodes as well.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Shahin. Lovely to talk.
Absolute pleasure. Take care.
Hey, it's Alex again from X Growth. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, we'd love it if you take a moment to rate us on Apple Podcasts. It would really help get the word out to other B2B professionals. If you're hungry for more B2B content, make sure to join our Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack, where we share the latest B2B news, tactics, tips, and chat about problems we're facing in the B2B space and find solutions together. That's growthcolony.org/Slack. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode.